It was remarked earlier this evening that you're not going to be able to go in and take out that debris for days or even weeks to come. The best way, the only way really to get an estimate is to know how many people were working in each company, in each office, on each floor, run a census and see who can respond, who got out and who's missing, and add up those numbers. And as the mayor of New York City, Mayor Giuliani, said earlier this evening, it's going to be horrendous.
Garrick, thank you. The attacks have given U.S. President Bush the biggest test of his still young presidency. Let's bring in CNN's Gene Meserve in Washington now for more on the story from the U.S. Capitol. Gene.
We're late to some of the latest comments from U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell, who says there were no specific warnings of the multiple attacks. We'll undoubtedly learn more Wednesday morning when he briefs reporters. Powell was on a trip to Peru and Colombia. He cut it short and returned to Washington and made a vow that the people responsible for the attacks would be caught.
They can destroy buildings, they can kill people, and we will be saddened by this tragedy, but they will never be allowed to kill the spirit of democracy. They cannot destroy our society. They cannot destroy our belief in the democratic way. You can be sure that America will deal with this tragedy in a way that brings those responsible to justice. You can be sure that as terrible a day as this is for us, we will get through it because we are a strong nation, a nation that believes in itself.
Powell's State Department was evacuated today, but it was the Pentagon that took a direct hit when an American Airlines 757 slammed into it. 24,000 people normally work at the Pentagon, and with 100 to 800 people reported missing, officials are grim about what the death toll will be.
There cannot be any survivors. It just would be beyond comprehension. There are a number of people that they've not identified by name, but identified as being dead, and there are a number of casualties. But the FBI has secured the site, and the information takes time to come. People have been lifted out and taken away in ambulances, and the numbers will be calculated, and it will not be a few.
Secretary Rumsfeld says the Pentagon is still functioning despite the harsh blow that it took today. The Pentagon, of course, across the river from us in Washington, D.C. CNN's Bob Franken is there. Bob, what's going on at this hour?
Well, at this hour, there's sort of a waiting pattern, waiting for daybreak, when if things go the way they want them to, the fire will have subsided enough inside that they'll be able to peel back this crushed-in area and start going through the rubble, looking to see if there are any survivors, looking to see exactly how many casualties they have. All of that, as I said, is what they hope to do at daybreak. Also, the Pentagon is going to be open for business tomorrow. That is to say, about half of it. We've been told that a full half of it will shut down. Of course, it was not a full half that actually sustained the damage from that airplane. You can see in back of me it was well short of that. But there is a concern about the structural damage over a massive part of the Pentagon. The Pentagon actually has about 17 miles of corridor, so there's about half of it which is really suspect in terms of safety. So all of that, of course, is coming tomorrow. We're going to be finding out the first signs about just how serious this was in human terms. It was, of course, something that happened how many hours ago now? About 18 hours ago, when a plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon that you see in back of me. This is the west side of the Pentagon. Most of the critical offices, those where the secretaries and deputy secretaries are, where the military command center is, those were not hit by this plane, and of course it did not penetrate into the inner circle of the Pentagon, which would have been even more catastrophic. Now, the Pentagon is also, of course, the seat of the military power in the United States, Gene, and plans are being made now for some military responses and also some protections. We'll get to those in just a moment. But, Gene, what we have here then is a situation where the Pentagon is trying to calculate the damage, trying to calculate just how much damage has been done, both in physical terms and in human terms. Gene?
Bob, when you say half the building will be shut down today, I guess I should say, the hours have changed on me. How is this going to affect the military capability of the U.S.?
Well, they're going to be able to, in fact, handle everything. Of course, the Pentagon is such a huge operation, and many of the operations can be switched to the other part. The Pentagon is, in fact, already operating militarily. It has ordered that ships be sent out on both coasts. The Navy announced just a short while ago that it was sending an aircraft carrier, altogether 15 ships that would operate to protect the West Coast and Hawaii. The aircraft carrier is the USS Stennis. That follows action on the East Coast, where the Kennedy was sent out along with the George Washington support ships to patrol the East Coast, particularly the northern East Coast, north of Norfolk. That would include Washington and the New York area in particular. And of course, orders are going out in the Middle East. The USS Enterprise, which was supposed to be heading back, in fact, was stopped in the Arabian Gulf. It is going to stay there now pending military decisions. Gene?
Bob Pryken at the Pentagon, thanks so much. The U.S. Defense Department is operating a hotline for staff to ring in and report their status. All Army personnel who work at the Pentagon are asked to call 1-800-984-8523 or 703-428-0002. Families seeking information on Army personnel are also asked to call that number. The number for Navy and Marine Corps personnel is 1-877-633-6772. This as the military tries to account for all of its personnel. The U.S. Congress, when it reconvenes this morning, plans to pass a bipartisan resolution condemning the attacks. The Capitol building was evacuated as a precaution early Tuesday, shortly after the attacks. Flags there were flying at half-staff. Government sources say that senior administration officials told members of Congress that hijacked plane that crashed in Pennsylvania could have been heading for the Capitol, the White House, or Camp David. Of course, none of those hit. Today, members of the House and Senate sang God Bless America as they gathered on the Capitol steps. Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle said Congress will speak with one voice, as it sang with one voice, to condemn the attack, comfort the families, and bring those responsible to justice. The U.S. says it has not yet received any credible claim of responsibility for the attacks, but there is no shortage of suspects. Topping the list, exiled Saudi dissident Osama bin Laden. U.S. intelligence officials tell CNN that there are good indications that persons linked to Osama bin Laden may be responsible for these attacks. Taliban officials in Afghanistan, where bin Laden is based, say they doubt his involvement. Earlier, the editor of the influential Arab newspaper Al-Quds told us that bin Laden was capable of such an act.
The man is ruthless, and he believes that he should declare war against the United States. And this kind of appeal, this kind of call actually appealed to many young Muslims all over the world. And he recently managed to recruit a lot of those highly educated Arabs who were even educated in the United States itself and some Western countries. So I'm not surprised if he is surrounded with experts in different fields.
Bin Laden is already wanted in the U.S. in connection with the 1998 bombings of 2 American embassies in Africa, which killed more than 200 people. And CNN's terrorism analyst Peter Bergen reports that he did have pilots in his organization. U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch says there's some evidence that Osama bin Laden's organization might have been behind the attacks. He told CNN about it earlier, along with a word of warning to Afghanistan's Taliban rulers.
The Taliban have been harboring Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden has said that it is the duty of every Muslim to kill Americans. There's every indication that he has been behind some of the attacks against American installations, and we happen to know just today that we've got information that indicates that representatives who are affiliated with Osama bin Laden were actually saying over the airwaves that, the private airwaves at that they had hit 2 targets.
And that summarizes events and developments here in the nation's capital. Now for more on international reaction, let's go back to John in Atlanta. John.
Jean Meserve, thanks very much. In fact, we have some news just in we want to share with you.
Just in this to CNN from CNN's terrorism analyst Peter Bergen. In 1993, Osama bin Laden's group purchased an airplane from a boneyard in Tucson, Arizona, and paid $210,000 for the retired jet. That's a military aircraft with the designation T-389, the equivalent of the civilian Sabre 40. The plane was subsequently flown from Dallas-Fort Worth to Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, via Canada, Iceland, Rome, and Cairo, according to the plane's pilot, Essam al-Ridi, a member of bin Laden's al-Qaeda organization. John.
International reaction to the attacks in the United States has been shock and sorrow and support. Leaders from across Europe are expressing their anger and their feelings for the United States, as well as their determination to stand firm against further acts of terrorism. For more on the European Union response, the EU International Affairs Chief Javier Solana joins us now on the line from Brussels. Let me ask you first, sir, about the kind of humanitarian or diplomatic or military support you think Europe is prepared to offer now.
All the humanitarian aid is being analyzed now, and we're in permanent contact with the American government to see how much we can give and what type of specific issues are necessary now to be solved. But we are prepared all the possibilities that not only the European Union as such, but the different countries of the European Union. At this very moment, I would like to say very, very clearly, all Europe is the United States. We are with our friends, we are with our allies, and we are very, very close to the suffering of the families. We want to say once again our solidarity with the American people, with the institutions, with the President of the United States, and you can be sure that the European Union citizens and the European Union institutions will be absolutely together, shoulder to shoulder.
Let me ask you, sir, the U.S. President is being urged to respond sooner rather than later and to respond in strength to these attacks. It's going to be, we imagine, a military response of some kind once decisions are reached. How concerned is Europe about that? How eager or supportive would it be?
We have a place where we have the possibility of showing that solidarity, which is NATO. NATO had a meeting last night already. It will have another meeting on the day, along the day, and we will be there together with our friends, American friends, to see what is the best manner to respond.
It has been suggested that George W. Bush should do what George Bush Sr. did, which is assemble a coalition before there is any military response to these attacks. Does the United States need international help in this matter, or can it act first and quickly and alone?
Well, this is a decision that the United States leaders have to take. But whatever is the decision, we are ready to cooperate with them in a fight, in a battle which is against terrorism, which is a battle against everybody.
Javier Solana, International Policy Chief of the European Union. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you very much.
As we have been reporting, U.S. officials regard extremists linked to Osama bin Laden as prime suspects in the attacks against Washington and New York. Osama bin Laden is believed to be in Afghanistan, and early Wednesday there were explosions in Kabul, the Afghan capital. Soldiers from the ruling Taliban say the explosions seem to come from a low-flying helicopter firing rockets. The United States swiftly denied any involvement, and CNN's Nick Robertson in Kabul reported that a rebel group had claimed responsibility. A spokesman for the Taliban denies Afghanistan allowed bin Laden to strike from its territory.
We in Afghanistan do not allow Osama bin Laden to use Afghanistan's territory to launch attacks against any country around the world. We took away all communication devices from him, and he does not have any communication with anybody outside of Afghanistan. In any case, we will conduct our own investigation and find out what happened, and we denounce this terrorist attack, whoever is behind it.
The Taliban, as you just heard, have denounced the attack and say they will conduct their own investigation.
And bringing you now up to date on what we know so far, thousands of people are feared dead in the aftermath of coordinated terrorist attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. 2 airliners crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, causing them both to collapse. A third structure, Building 7, also collapsed later in the day. About 2,000 rescue workers are on the scene in New York. There is hope that there are some survivors in the rubble. New York's mayor says 2 have made cell phone calls to their relatives. Rescue personnel are also on the scene at the Pentagon, the target of hijackers on board a 3rd airliner. Officials say anywhere from 100 to 800 people are missing. Rescue workers in New York are struggling through the night to reach survivors of the attacks, knowing full well that they're going to find many, many people who never had a chance. A spokesman for the International Association of Fire Chiefs says at least 265 New York firefighters are feared dead, including the city's fire chief and many of its highest-ranking members. Hospitals throughout the New York City area standing by to admit those rescued from the rubble. At least 2,000 people were treated Tuesday, and hospital officials are expecting many more. St. Vincent's Hospital